I think that even if we disagree on the causes of climate change, most of us can agree that it's happening. But do we agree on what we can do to help? What would the church say? Is there even a solution for climate change? Well, joining me now to offer a suggestion is Luke Stocking of the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace. Luke, welcome.
Thank you. Always great to see you.
Yes, good. I think you were in this program in one of the first shows that we ever did a long time ago. I won't say how long. Before we talk about climate change, let's talk about development and peace, because it's a big anniversary for you guys.
Big one.
And it's an opportunity to celebrate.
Yes.
And maybe some people are not even sure what development and peace is.
Unfortunately, probably a lot of people are not aware of what development and peace is.
So what is development and peace?
Yes. So you're right, 50 years ago, 1967, easier to remember, last time the Leafs won the Stanley Cup. We have a milieu when Vatican II has just happened, and the church, the truly universal church, has come into contact with another bishops from industrialized rich countries, come into contact with bishops from poorer countries, and in that encounter they realize that there is this what the Pope then called at the time the scandal of glaring inequalities, realizing that the dominant socioeconomic system of the day has created these vast disparities between rich and poor. And reflecting on that in the light of the faith, in the light of the teaching of the faith, the bishops say, we need to do something. We need to create organizations to address this scandal of glaring inequalities.
Now, this is specifically the bishops in Canada you're talking
about. The bishops globally. So you actually have, at that time in the 60s, quite a number of organizations like Development and Peace being founded and taking place and happening in other countries as well.
So was Caritas Internationalis also being formed at the time, or does that later?
The Caritas is a bit of a different story.
Okay.
So
at this
comes
point
into
they're
the
not
picture,
all
though.
related.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
They're not all related yet. So they come back and they form Development and Peace, but they say we want to form a special organization. In their letter that basically announces Development and Peace to the world, they say this is a challenge of a different kind. They could have said, okay, we're going to set up a charity. We're going to staff it with professionals who know how to, run anti-poverty programs or something. And you people in the pews, your job is going to be to give them money,
donate,
right? To donate, and that's all we're going to ask of you. That was not the vision. The vision was, we see in the faith that a call to engage in a true solidarity with our brothers and sisters around the world. And the way to do that is to start living the social teachings of our faith day to day, to use that lens to reflect on what we see happening in the world, the economic systems, social systems, etc., and to try and bring the gospel to those systems to transform them. Right. And the actual belief that any Catholic anywhere in the country can do that, not on their own. So they formed Development and Peace to allow them to do that. So it's formed as a lay-led, member-based organization. It draws inspiration from other Catholic movements like the Young Christian Workers movement, for example, and how it organizes. So it believes immediately in forming small groups of people in parishes, schools, and communities to come together to then learn on the issues of the day and then to take action on them. This whole notion of see, judge, act.
Right.
So Development Peace starts to take shape around that time in the 60s. 50 years, the slogan of our campaign this year, at the heart of the action.
Yes.
So for 50 years, we've tried to be at the heart of the action. Fun fact, in the course of 50 years, Development Peace has supported the efforts of no less than 3 different Nobel Peace Prize winners. So the work that was supported resulted in 3 Nobel Peace Prizes.
Interesting.
So anyways, long story short, it's been 50
Lots
years.
of good work.
A chance, it is, in essence, Development Peace is a chance for every Catholic in this country to live the gospel call to international solidarity.
Right, so but to learn and to do.
Exactly, learn and do.
And the doing part, I guess, is, well, I guess both the education and
pray,
action.
unless you, praying is part of the doing and the learning too.
No, that's true. No, but that's important. That's important. Thank you for mentioning that, because everything has to be rooted in the gospel.
Exactly.
And in our faith life. Otherwise, we're just it's some NGO, and the Pope talks about this all the time. So every year there's a campaign. You
Right.
mentioned this year's campaign. So you have a focus on something that you're working on, where we can all educate ourselves about something and then do something.
Exactly.
The last couple years, give us examples of campaigns that there've been through the years. Sort of what sorts of issues you've been looking at.
So the fall campaign, that institution actually comes into being in the late 70s, early 80s, where at the time, originally, Development Peace would mobilize people around Lent always, our Share Lent campaign.
So Share, I was going to mention that people, if they don't recognize Development and Peace, they probably recognize Share Lent.
Exactly. So what happened was the members who were getting really engaged in Share Lent, and then Lent would happen, and they'd be like, now what do we do? What we want to keep. So to provide them with a focus, another energy, we developed this fall campaign. One of the first fall campaigns was around apartheid in South Africa.
Okay, yeah.
And believe it or not, there was a debate that happened in Development Peace whether we should support Nelson Mandela or not because he's a terrorist.
Yes. Yeah,
so
interesting.
Always the context of the times, right?
Yeah.
We're glad we did support him.
So I guess that would have been what was current at the time,
right?
In the same way that if there's a natural disaster, Haiti or hurricanes
or
whatever, would you do
So we have a
campaigns
great
to support?
timeline on our website right now that you can see the different moments, and always the thing that is common is always as an organization we are reflecting on where is the Spirit calling us right now, and for the last several years, the Spirit has been calling us to engage in the ecological crisis. Now, most people think of the ecological crisis as like the environmental crisis, and people say, well, you guys are about supporting, the poor around the world and solving global poverty. Like, you're not an environmental organization.
So why are you saving trees?
Right. So exactly. So we are increasingly, especially under the guidance of this Pope, understanding what it means to speak of an ecological crisis.
Right.
The rupture in the relationships that exist between humanity and God, humanity and our fellow brothers and sisters, and humanity and creation and the earth. So those, and we see, and I think that's where, and we'll get into this, where as a faith organization we have something important to say about the ecological crisis because of our understanding of what that means. And again, to clarify, so when we talk about ecology, we're not talking about the natural ecology only, we're also talking about the human ecology because of those three relationships. And this is totally rooted not just in Pope Francis's Laudato Si, but I mean, there's such a body of teaching that goes way back to the book of Genesis. It's been around for a while, 2,000 years or so.
Or more. So the last couple, so you mentioned that you feel called now, and maybe the last couple of years, to look at agriculture. Climate change is part of that?
Yeah, exactly. And people, when you say climate change, they think, get the cars off the road, shut down the tar sands,
carbon
and they
emissions,
think, which
energy
all that
is
energy,
part of it,
exactly. Energy is a huge part of it, but people don't realize how huge a part the question of agriculture and how we feed ourselves, how we feed 7 billion people in the human family is also a part of it.
Okay, let me stop you for a second. We want to talk about agriculture, but so do you think that one of the reasons why this climate change issue is controversial is because there's a misunderstanding that it's only about energy or carbon emissions, and that instead that it's in fact it's a larger issue, or are there other reasons why it's controversial?
Well, I
guess there's people who deny that it's happening.
Right. I think why it's controversial is because inherent is it a challenge to reflect on our own lives and to change
how I live my life
and how that's change is tough. And I think that's ultimately why. We're amazing at rationalizing things, as human beings, and in the face of all the evidence, and all the evidence tells us we need to change.
But would you say that, like I said in the introduction, whether we disagree on what the causes are, or whether it's human caused, that there is something that we need to do, that we can do as human beings to make it better?
Oh yeah.
And that's where the action can start.
Yeah, for
And that's
sure.
why the church would say, yeah, well,
Yeah,
we can.
exactly.
Who cares? We're not blaming anybody, but we can do something to fix
Yeah,
it.
and that's why it's a hopeful message, an exciting message as well too. It's because there is something we can do. Where it's not doom and gloom. There is something we can do. We can, we can. Who is it? You probably know who's the one who says that the great tragedy is not that we don't change, but that we can change at any minute.
Yeah,
I forget who
yeah.
said
Nelson,
that.
I might have been Mandela actually.
Could have been.
Yeah. Our deepest fear is not that we're incapable, that we're powerful beyond belief.
Exactly.
Maybe just to end off our first half here before the break. In summary, then, would you say that issue, or all those, I mean, we understand poverty, those social justice issues, but climate, ecology is very much rooted in our faith?
Of course.
Why? Or how?
You read Laudato Si, right? No, I know. No,
you're the guest.
I get right.
So,
yeah.
but how, maybe not why, but how? So like.
Yeah. Well, I think
like
so. It goes back to this sense of, it's very clear as we read Scripture, as we reflect on the kind of the whole deposit of the faith, that and the encyclical captures this very well. And I said this earlier, that our reality is first of all fundamentally relational. It's relational, and it consists of three sets of relationships, right? Between me and my Creator, between me and my brothers and sisters that I share creation with, and with the natural world, creation itself.
Yeah.
So we have those three, and we are called to nurture and develop each of those relationships
because they're related. So if
exactly.
Yes, if one's not healthy, then the other two are not going to be healthy
suffer.
at all. They
Exactly.
all suffer. Yeah, that's good. That's a good place to take a break. We're talking about climate change and agriculture. We'll get to the connection in our next half an hour. It's a short break. Don't go anywhere. I'm speaking with Luke Stocking, and we'll be back shortly. We're speaking with Luke Stocking of the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace. This year's campaign, Luke, if I look at the materials, it looks like, or if I read, I guess, the beginning, ecological justice, family farming, what does it have to do with climate change?
Sure. So our research that we use says that the current model that we have, the current dominant model of producing food, which we refer to as the industrial agricultural system, produces anywhere from 10 to 15% of greenhouse gas emissions globally. Now, that's just in terms of pure production. If we look at the whole of the system, not just the production, but also the processing, packaging, transport, delivery, the whole thing, waste, the whole thing. Some studies then peg the number closer to 50%.
Wow.
Now, obviously, our paradigms around energy are connected to that because the energy sources that we use within that whole industrialized system are greenhouse gas emitting, energies. So, at the same time that we have this system, our analysis would also say that that system is not doing a good job feeding the world, ultimately. Ultimately, I mean, despite there having been progress and probably proponents of an industrial system wanting to take all the credit for that progress, there has been progress in terms of reducing hunger, but we can do much, much better. And there are still, hundreds of millions of people experiencing hunger every day.
Right.
In our 50 years as Development Peace, a lot of those people are people that we have been supporting, accompanying, walking with, small family farmers, struggling just to make enough to be able to feed their families, to be able to feed their communities. So we think that system is broken, and especially when we look at that system and its impact on the planet.
Right.
The good news is that we think there's an alternative as well too.
Yeah.
And the great news about that alternative is that it also is a pro-poor alternative.
Right.
already these small family farmers on, tiny plots of land, are feeding more than half of the world's population.
Right.
So if we can support them and support that vision, an alternative vision to the industrial model, we think that we can help combat hunger, we can build healthy communities, healthy people, and tackle climate change.
Right.
Because the notion, the principles behind small family farming and principles of agroecology are about working in harmony with creation.
Right.
My brother, who's a farmer, he'll look at a field and he'll see weeds and he'll say, "Weeds tell a story." So it's about reading the land and working in harmony with it, as opposed to seeing the land as a pure material object
to be used,
yes, and injected with whatever inputs you need to extract as much as you can out of it. It's not about working in harmony or balance at all. And some would say that is also, going back to the ecological crisis, a part of the rupture.
Yeah, of course. So earlier you were mentioning that the campaign is educational and action. So obviously you're educating people in what you just told us.
Right.
Which I'm sure is new information for most people, but there's also the action. So what can I do? Do I just go to my local market and support my farmers, or is there more that I can do? What's the actual action campaign?
Well, supporting your local farmer is always a great start. That's very important, and actually that highlights something important too, because what we are proposing as solutions are global. So it does mean,
right,
looking at what we're doing here in Canada even as well too. But our action, so we have a postcard this year that we are trying to get as many people as possible to sign, is really a continuation of our action from last year. So last year, and as part of our what was called the Create a Climate of Change campaign, we were trying to influence the federal government's position in advance of the global climate talks in Paris.
Yes.
That a lot of Catholic organizations mobilized around. So it wasn't just us here in Canada,
yes,
all over the world. In that postcard, we asked our federal government to make resources available to support those the most affected by climate change, the poor of the global south. Because, and that's why it's an issue of justice for us, the most affected are not us living in Canada.
No.
It's our brothers and sisters around the world.
Right.
They responded by saying, okay, we are announcing $2.65 billion for this purpose.
This was the Canadian government.
The Canadian government
So
did this on November 27th.
$2.65 billion.
$2.65 billion to be spent by the year 2020.
Okay.
So, that's
4 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. And, they're probably counting on us forgetting about that 4 years from now. Well, we're not going to forget, which is what this campaign is about.
Okay.
So we're saying, okay, good. Now, how do we do that? How do we tackle climate change, support those affected by climate change with this wealth that we as taxpayers are now going to put to this cause? We're saying agriculture needs to be the heart of the solution. And not just any agriculture. We're saying let's support those family farmers around the world affected by climate change by putting those resources into ensuring things like they have access to adequate amounts of land, that they have access to support systems that allow them to be able to develop that land according to principles of agroecology, according to a healthy vision of farming for the planet and for their community. Ensure that those associations that they are supported by also have a voice at a policy level in terms of agricultural policies set by countries. So we're saying, let's use that money to this purpose, and if we do that, we can tackle climate change at the same time.
Right. So you're not just reminding the government that they've pledged this money, but you're suggesting to them how they should invest this money.
How they should invest it.
And how does that money? So do you help? Would you help the government also disperse that money through organizations locally in the global south?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think the government even knows yet. So, we want to be part of the conversation.
Right.
And being part of the conversation can be everything from, setting the policies for how those funds are dispersed, to making connections for the government as to where those funds can be dispersed as well too.
Yeah.
So there's a whole realm of possibility.
Right.
And that could include everything and anything that you suggested. So
Now, you've mentioned two terms. I think we understand ecological justice, but
agroecology.
Agroecology, I think I know what you mean, but can you explain a little bit what that term refers to?
Sure, yeah. So agroecology, we like to say now is, we can think of it in three different ways. As a science, as a set of practices, and as a movement. So as a science, we can, in a nutshell, basically say that agroecology is the bringing together the study of ecology and the study of agronomy. So it's saying when in the practice of growing food, of practicing agriculture, we have to pay attention to the ecology of the place in which we are doing it. And we look at how those interactions, our interactions with the earth to bring food from it, fit into the ecology of the place. Some places are not meant for growing this or growing that, or things grow together. Or how does what we are growing work with the pollinators in the area? How do we ensure that the bees are able to work in harmony? All that kind of stuff.
And the birds and all the other.
Exactly, the birds and the bees. So we have a science. Then we have a set of practices as well too that flow from the science. Everything from, for example, focusing on the health of the soils. So often, in an industrial model, we think of, well, if the soil lacks something, we just dump fertilizer into it. And that's how we don't develop the health of that soil organically based on, the ecology of the area. So there's a whole set of practices that we could go into. And then it's also a movement in the sense that because it is a vision of how to produce food that stands in contrast to very powerful agricultural interests in the world, it requires a movement of people to put those ideals forward and bring people into practicing it.
Right. Maybe just to end, because this is a lot of really good information, but one of the first things you said about Development and Peace today was that it's a member-based organization, and I have to confess that I did not until this week realize that I could become a member, or that my parish, as a parish, could become a member. What does that mean, and how does it work, and how can we get as many people watching to become a
members?
Member? Yes.
Yeah. So that's part of Development and Peace's gift to the church, is that membership is the invitation by which we call people in the pews, in our schools, our communities, to join into this mission. In their wisdom, when the bishops set up Development and Peace, they set it up as a lay organization with all these different possibilities for engagement. So if somebody becomes a member of Development and Peace, then they start to they start to learn about what the organization is doing. They find out ways to participate. They bring the mission of Development and Peace to their parish. I mean, sadly, still to this day, there are many, many parishes in Canada that don't participate in the mission of the organization. Maybe save for, taking up a collection on the fifth Sunday of Lent for Share Lent, right?
Yes.
But to really participate in the mission, membership offers that opportunity. By becoming a member, you get connected to a whole community of Catholics in this country who care deeply about living their faith in a way that reflects our commitment to international solidarity. So anybody can become a member.
And you get all the resources and everything.
You get all the resources. Yeah, exactly.
Does it cost?
It used to.
Oh, this is good.
So we have
free membership?
Yeah, for our Jubilee year.
Okay.
Jubilee year. So sign up now.
So if you sign up this year because it's the 50th anniversary, I can become a lifetime member?
Lifetime member. Yeah. So
for free.
For free. Exactly.
And if I don't join this year,
then it'll cost you $10.
$10 for the year.
Yeah, no.
Sorry,
$10 for life.
For life.
So we used to have a very complicated system of 1 year, 3 year, 5 year memberships. You sign up, you have to renew. You sign
I like the free one better.
Yeah, free is good. Right?
Okay, no, this is good. So what I'm going to suggest is that people sign up for free and then make a $10 donation anyway.
That would be wonderful.
Because the money is being well used. Luke, thank you so much for explaining all this. I'm sure we've piqued a lot of people's interest, and they're going to become members and join in the action. Luke Stocking from the Canadian Catholic Organization for Development and Peace. If you want to find out more, how to become a member, how to get one of these action cards so that you can sign it and send it to our government, go to their website, devp.org. And remember, you can always reach us here if you have any questions or comments through Facebook or Twitter. That's all for today. May God continue to bless you and your home.